Hey there, welcome to another Tesla Motors Club podcast. My name is Lewis.
I'm Doug.
And I'm Mike.
On today's episode, we're going to cover all the fun and exciting things that came out after the Tesla Cybertruck event. And we've got a very special guest to do that with us, Dirty Tesla. So, with all that said, let's get into the show. Episode number 56 starts now. And we're here. How are you, gentlemen? How are things?
Doing well.
Pretty good.
It's an unusual night for us, but Doug is all the way in Japan joining us.
So you can tell it's like, I don't know if you can tell, it's daylight here. It's like 11 o'clock in the morning here. So
I'm super jealous. I need to renew my passport. That'll be probably my first trip again.
Yeah, actually, part of the reason I'm here is because I need to renew my passport. A lot of places need a couple months of validity, I guess is the word, of your passport. But Japan, as long as it's still valid while you're here, they're fine. So it's like a quick trip before I actually renew my passport.
Nice. Oh man. Well, I mean, I'm excited. Cybertruck event happened. I was not part of the stream for that one. I had a conflict, but I did watch a good portion of it. It seemed like you guys had a lot of fun, but not as much fun as our guest tonight, Dirty Tesla. Chris at Dirty Tesla. Man, you were there. I'm so jealous. That is exciting.
In person.
Tell us all about it. How was it?
It was a lot of fun. Tesla does a good job putting on an event. Some people said it's not the best event. I thought it was great. I've been to a few different Tesla events now, and in terms of the ones I've experienced, I thought it was a great time. You got to go walk right in the front doors of Gigafactory Texas, which is decorated nicely, and they had different parts of the Cybertruck on display as you went through. So they had the body, and then the motor, and then the front and rear castings. They had a door on display. The one guy was kind of cleaning it, showing how he wipes it off and stuff. And then you go into the factory where they're actually building the Cybertrucks. And this is what really blew me away because, they're starting production. And of course, the machines were on a demo mode. They weren't actually building the trucks at the time. But yeah, they started production. Yeah, they're technically delivering some today. But you're like, oh, they're just barely getting started. And you're walking down this line. And I mean, I didn't count. I should have, but I would have guessed there was like 100 Cybertrucks there. And I was like, I did not imagine being surrounded by all these Cybertrucks in different, steps of production. So as you walk down the line, you start and there's like barely, the body in white or whatever the under part is called. I'm, not an engineer or anything. And then as you get to the end, right before you get to where they're doing the presentation, it's like a pretty much completed Cybertruck. And you got to see all those steps. As you walk through there, I barely realized this till I had got through because it's just so that, you're kind of like overwhelmed by all this cool stuff. They have like different pieces of the truck on display. So like one had the frunk and they had a sign like Tesla's first powered frunk. And they kind of talked about it. And then they had the motors sitting there and, these different parts. And by those different parts were employees who had actually worked on this stuff, standing there ready to talk to you about whatever you wanted. And at one, Tesla's usually so secretive about this stuff. I was recording, of course, because you could be recording. And I walk up to the guy standing at the front and I start to ask him a question. I go, oh, I'm holding my phone. I'm recording. And he goes, yeah, that's fine. And it's just for Tesla, that's kind of weird. But it was awesome. So, I mean, there's so much more. I don't know if you want me to just keep going.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. They used to be much more open. With the event you're talking about, your event sounds pretty similar to the event they did. I'm forgetting when it might have been 2010, but it was when they had their beta vehicles of the Model S, and you got to go into the factory. It was just called factory. It was before they did Gigafactories, but it was the Fremont factory. And they had all the machines in like a demo mode, just sort of showing what a stamping would look like kind of thing. And they had engineers around, and you could chat with them. It wasn't... I don't feel like YouTube was as big of a thing then, or at least it wasn't a thing that you could really monetize as much back then. So, but I had, I took a bunch of videos of people and they seemed pretty cool back then. But somehow in the middle, they got a lot more secretive. Right. But, that's good to see that they're clearly they've been told that they can talk because when they're not sure, they can get pretty cagey and pretty scared for their jobs, I guess.
If you're a Tesla employee, always err on the side of don't say anything to anybody unless you're given explicit permission, because you do not want Elon to be mad at you. Man,
Yeah.
that's so awesome though. That sounds exciting. If you ever need a cameraman, I just let me know. I would have followed you around the whole night.
That's right. Lewis is in Austin.
I live in
so.
Austin. I would have
Oh,
come right
cool.
over.
I didn't know. Yeah,
Um,
I was lucky enough to have my wife with me holding the camera.
Oh,
So, but thank you.
that's
I
fair.
appreciate
That's
that.
fair. She's a better cameraman than I would be, I'm sure. But
Well,
Or a
But,
better
uh,
man than you,
you'd be too
apparently.
busy
Sir, I
gawking at
mean,
everything.
we won't go there. But no, that's awesome. That sounds really exciting. So you got to meet all these, you got to see all this cool internals and stuff. You got to meet, various engineers and employees and ask them questions. Any of those displays that like stood out to you as being the most impressive? Like, was there anything that you were most interested in or you really enjoyed?
It was too overwhelming to really,
Okay.
for me,
Fair.
it's a combination of just, there was so much there and it was all new because it's all
Gotcha.
Cybertruck. And we're like, yeah, I guess they're starting production, and just like being kind of overwhelmed by that. And also, just being totally honest, not having the best depth of knowledge of building a car. So,
Sure.
I've learned things along the years just from following Tesla and how different things happen and et cetera, but I don't have like a depth of that knowledge. So
Sure.
every single display to me was like, this is amazing. There's a motor there and the wheels. And like, they had the robot putting the tires on the car. So it picks up the
Mhm.
robot and it uses a camera to look at the lugs, and it just get it, and then it can put it on. And like that to me, it was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. So
These are like the Kuka robots, or like the big sort of red.
it was the
Okay.
red one. It was like
Okay.
the arm basically. And it could, do this. And there was just everything. It was very overwhelming. It was very
Well,
cool.
let me ask you, what was the sense in the room during the presentation, or at least with the end of the presentation? Because from our perspective, while we're doing the show, I mean, they had some videos that was pretty nice. Elon isn't the most polished speaker, but that's is what it is. But like the thing ended, and I'm like, wait a minute. They said nothing about price. They said nothing about range.
It seemed kind of abrupt.
And then so we all had to look it up, and I'm assuming in the room they had to do that. And my sense was they didn't mention those things because they probably didn't want on camera everybody going, because I think it was, I think overall it's very exciting stuff, but like the two main things that everyone had the question going in, and the presentation itself did not answer: what is the actual range, what is the actual cost, and both felt like an undeliver, or at least they didn't match the promise, even though other things maybe make up for it. Those are the main things people understand and had real questions about, and they weren't answered. So eventually, I guess everybody in the room is having to look this stuff up on their phone. So what, how was that? What was the sense?
Yeah, it was very strange. So the presentation was really good in person. The videos were very impressive. The sound was good. Elon, did fine and everything. And everybody, was pretty positive and upbeat. But yeah, we're all like, all right, what's the range and the price? And when it was over, it was definitely the sense of like, that was slightly superficial. Like, okay, they mentioned the steer by wire. That's amazing. Very cool. They didn't go that in depth, but they mentioned it. And they showed some of the demos of the towing and all that stuff. And okay, very cool. And then of course people started getting pings on their phone from people not in the event, because of course no one at the event is looking at the internet really. We're all recording or paying attention or whatever. So then it starts spreading like, oh, the price is online, and everyone starts talking about the price and everything. And yeah, overall it was like this immediate sense of kind of like disappointment, honestly, due to the price being so high and the range being so low. My initial take when I saw the prices, I was not surprised at all, because I am not very trusting of like corporations. So like, I don't care what they tell me. I'm not going to believe what they say until they actually, deliver on whatever they say. So this whole time leading up to Cybertruck, in all conversations I was having online and with other people, I was like, just look at Model X. They can't have a $50,000 Cybertruck that goes 300 miles. And it's, when they have an $80,000 Model X that barely goes farther than that, it doesn't make any sense. So I always had this 79,999. That's, if you'll look up my talking on X or on the internet, you'll see leading up to this, I was like, it's going to be 79,999. That's going to be a price, because they can say they get the tax credit, but it's the most amount of money they can get. I also, in my head at some points I was like, this thing's gonna be $100,000. It's just going to be too expensive. Once Tesla started dropping the prices of all their cars, I started getting a little more hopeful for some more reasonable prices. But having super constrained production, along with immense demand, even if 90% of people are disappointed, immense demand, you're gonna get a 79,000 price in there. I mean, why wouldn't they do that? So personally, I was not very shocked, but I understand if people look at the 2019 specs and they think they're going to get that, and then you don't even have a 350 mile Cybertruck, let alone 500 miles, you're gonna be like, what the heck? So I was disappointed with the range, the price not as much. The one last thing I'll say to, because I have to say this, with the feel in the room, when Franz threw the baseball, they got their groan right there. Nobody was impressed by that. It was this like, ugh,
that was so bad.
So yeah, from us watching the video, it was so terrible. For one thing, Elon introduces it as like, oh, we had a little bit of a mishap, but we're going to try it again. And we're talking, we're like, oh, are they really going to do it again? Okay, that's cool. Like, okay, really show us this time. And it's like, wait, does he just have a baseball in his hand? The difference between a baseball and a steel ball bearing or whatever he had is so huge. And then he barely threw it. He just kind of, it just kind of bounced. I was like, dude, any car you threw something like that, the window's not going to break. Any normal car, the window's not going to break from a throw like that. He wasn't even trying. And Elon's like, oh, we could probably get a major league pitcher in here, and it'll still do it. What? Yeah. They shouldn't have even done it.
I would have been happier. I would have been happier if they literally brought out like a door with glass, wasn't even a car, and threw a ball bearing and shattered it again. Like that would have been a better reaction than, ugh. Like I can't throw a baseball. Like what? Is
that? He didn't wind up or anything. He just kind of like. It was so bad. It was embarrassing. It looked terrible on screen, and I felt like people were laughing in the room.
Yeah, no, the reaction in the room. I mean, I think I agree with you when you said they didn't announce the price and specs live because they didn't want the live stream to have everybody be like, oh, like gasping or like, people fainting, like, oh my God. But they got that reaction with the baseball thing. I mean, that just made no sense. It was very strange.
Yeah, it's funny when you think about the window break because, it didn't shatter, it just cracked or whatever. It didn't go through, right?
It didn't go through.
In the demo in 2019. It was, even though it was a little bit embarrassing, it was kind of what they call good TV, it created headlines, it got buzz, and it was kind of funny, and they leaned into it. And I thought that was fine. If you looked at the accessories you could get for your Cybertruck, you can get a nice decal that shows a cracked window, and you would think that would be like a $2 item, but they're charging $50 for it. So, I don't know if it's worth $50, but there are people that will pay $50 for that joke.
Right.
So yeah, and then what they end up doing with that baseball, I don't understand whose idea was that. I want them to fess up. I wouldn't be surprised if it was Elon's idea, but it was a terrible idea.
Yeah, for sure.
So you were talking about the price. For me, as I said, with the original presentation, the thing that really stuck with me from the whole thing, even though you have this vehicle that looks like a low poly, video game sort of thing, was the $40K price. I'm like, wow, that's really impressive. They can put all that technology. Even if it's like the cheap one with, only 200 miles of range, 40K, that's amazing. So I'm not surprised. Well, I would say I was really surprised that they announced that, and then I guess I am disappointed that they couldn't follow through with that.
Yeah, I think this all comes down to the 4680s not meeting their goals. I think that's all of it because, and I've talked about this in other lives I've done with people, and I still haven't done it, but I really want to go back to Battery Day and look at what they said. Because they gave us like concrete numbers. They're like, by this date or this year at least, the energy density is going to be this high, blah blah blah, and that's our goal. It's going to increase things by this much. So if you were to increase the energy density of these 4680 cells by a certain amount, then you could have the same pack size and you'd get your range, right? And I think if they could have done that, then they would have a $40,000 or $45,000 pickup truck that goes 250 miles because they could use way less cells, and they would have the 500-mile version, et cetera, et cetera. Or they could make a cheaper version and keep it at 300 with the range extender, because there are arguments for that, in my opinion. but 4680 just hasn't played out in the timeline that they had hoped. That's my, kind of main guess for that. And
I would say I would definitely agree with that.
yeah, and on top of that, that was another thing back in 2019. I remember when they put that 40K price up there, I was like, that's less than a Model 3, but that doesn't make any sense. How are you going to sell a
With
pickup?
all the better tech. Yeah.
Yeah, how are you going to sell a pickup truck with a whole new everything you're doing here for less than a Model 3 that goes like just barely less range? It just made no sense to me. So
I got a question for you, Chris.
Yep.
And I want to go back to the batteries a little bit. So did they have on you were talking about all the bits and pieces they had on display that you could walk around and take pictures and everything. Did they have the Rex, the range extender, out there anywhere to be seen? So
No.
that was a surprise.
That was a surprise. Yep.
Yeah.
And that was, again, in the presentation live, as you're watching, they're like, oh, 340 miles or 320 miles. And you're like, oh, and then it was this, you could just tell it was waves in the room of information being spread out. You could see it in real time. It was so weird. We're like, oh, here's the price that's online. And then everyone's like, oh my gosh, now we all know the price all of a sudden. And then wait a second, there's a picture that says range extender, 470 miles. And everyone's like, oh my God, we're saved. Like, and so
you lose half the bed when you do it. So.
Exactly. So, for me, I'm actually, I think a customer that would like that. Price wise, I don't know if I want to pay that much, but I want more range, and I don't have a bed now, and I'm getting away with it. So I think I could get away with a smaller bed, personally. But
I get the sense that range extender is a product that doesn't really exist yet.
It doesn't
just
seem
sort
to
of exist on paper. Yeah.
Right.
When you're talking about the cells, it'd be worthwhile to go back and see what the promise was. The last time I paid attention to it, and people were sort of talking about, like the cells have more energy density. But I did the math. Just by volume, they have the exact same volumetric energy density, right? Just that the cell is bigger. So yeah, per cell there's more energy, but it's literally a bigger cell.
It's a bigger cell. Yeah.
And it like by direct factor within like, I don't know. It was like directly. It was just the volume, the increase in volume.
And they're supposed to be significantly better. And I'm not a battery chemist. I don't want to claim to know, all these things that Tesla doesn't know, but they had higher aspirations, and maybe one day they'll get there. It just didn't happen in the timeline that they had kind of hoped for.
Well, that's the Tesla way, right?
Right. Yeah. Making the impossible late, right? Isn't that like what people say?
Yeah. But that's a big deal, right? Making late is still happening. Late is still it happens eventually, right?
Yeah, I'm not talking negative about it at all. I think it's just their goal was this and they didn't meet it. And no, I am very impressed with everything Tesla does, because all of these, Musk companies, maybe not all of them, but for the most part,
not all
of them, but many of these things he does, people say, oh, it's impossible. You can't do that. And then he does it. So, and his teams, he didn't go build rockets by himself, but I think everyone understands what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think when we spoke about the batteries, a couple times in past episodes, and my takeaway was always, I don't know, now I'm going to have to go back and listen. I'll probably contradict myself because that's the way of the internet. But pretty much all of the improvements in the 4680 cells, even now, are basically manufacturing and cost, right? It's really just improvements to Tesla's bottom line from a performance or energy technology, other types of things. There's really no improvement from the end user's perspective, except for maybe the cost savings and things maybe carrying over. But even when you look at the Model S or X, or we're doing the Plaids, they can't use those cells because they can't deliver the energy that is required. They have to use the older cells. So yeah, it's interesting to see. I think though that you're pretty spot on. I think that's a really legit intuition of they were optimistic, as Tesla usually is, that they would be in a better position, and they just didn't get there. What I'm curious of is and obviously, as Doug said, it's not really real, the range extender. I'm curious to see how heavy would that be? Is it something you can easily remove or add on, right? Okay, today I need my bed. I don't need the range. Let me take it out. It's
it doesn't look like it.
It's probably going to be heavy, right?
And my sense, what at least I've heard people talk about, it's not something you can just put in yourself. And to me, then that kind of defeats the purpose. It's not like a thing you can just sort of put in. It's something that has to be done at the service center. If that's the case, it's basically a permanent fixture of your car.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
So
that
my initial take was kind of what you're saying, like, oh, sweet, you get this extra battery for when you need it, or you can move it. But it's looking like it's 50 kilowatt hours, which is, the size of a Model 3 rear-wheel drive battery.
Yep.
And
couple thousand pounds.
yeah. I mean, I've seen estimates everywhere from 500 to 1,000 pounds. I don't know how it would only be 500. That seems too low to me, but
That seems kind of light.
yeah, exactly. It's going to be significant. I mean, you're not going to pick it up by yourself. You would need, heavy machinery to do that. And on top of that, an aspect I didn't think of, but I was talking to Kyle Connor. He's saying you have to hook up like coolant lines to this thing, right? It needs coolant, and you're going to have to. How are you going to get it to balance with the battery you already have in there? Because all the cells have to be balanced. And how do you get that much juice flowing back and forth between these two batteries when this is, a piece of the car that wasn't there before? Because if you want to supercharge this thing at 250 kilowatts, you have to have lines that allow that much energy to flow into it. I mean, there's just so many technical aspects of it. And as you
There's
said,
one more to think about, and especially for a truck, this is going to be the bed. This battery is going to be part of the new bed surface, so it has to be armored and built to withstand people dropping heavy things in there.
Right?
So.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. And that weight is higher too, so it's now level with the passenger
it's
as
a bit
opposed to
higher.
below the passenger. I would definitely say it's an afterthought, partly because it's not well integrated. Like they have like a sub trunk kind of space. If you had that kind of space, why didn't the batteries go there? For your extra range. So it doesn't feel like something that is well integrated into the car. If they really wanted to do something like that, you think they would have done it in a way that could have been user installable. You could think like maybe instead of one big module, it could have been 4 modules or something.
I suppose,
But spread around the car.
Well, just something that somebody could lift. Here's something that's 50 pounds. Somebody could lift 50 pounds or whatever, and then.
But to Chris's point, right, you're going to have electrical connections that have to be extremely robust. You're going to have coolant connections.
plus
you don't want
coolant,
somebody
plus,
to do
plus,
that
plus.
incorrectly.
Yeah,
They don't want to be liable.
You could, if you had some kind of quick connect or quick disconnect, whatever we call it, and if it self-burped or whatever, so that,
Not impossible to do.
Have you ever
be a
used
challenge.
have you ever used the portable batteries from Jackery or any of these people?
Oh yeah, I've got 2 of them.
How much does that weigh, and how many kilowatt hours do you got? You
Yeah,
know what
right.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
They weigh a lot and not much.
Exactly. So I don't think user installable is like feasible for any amount of significant range you're going to get.
Well, I was just
And-
kind of playing in my head what you just said about charging. I mean, that would be a nightmare. I mean,
Right.
I really think what you're going to see is 2 charging circuits. You're going to see
Yeah, it just
one
needs another
plug
plug.
for the pack, one for the car.
You just put another
could plug
port
it in
on
and
the
that-
battery pack. You
there's
need
that-
2
I was
plugs.
I was gonna say you have that 120 port. You could just plug it in there
Yeah,
and
there you go.
recharge it.
There you
Yeah,
go.
so your 50 kilowatt hours of battery is only
Self-charging.
charging at 11 kilowatts. That would be awful. That would be a terrible solution. I
Yeah.
mean, even regen gets up to 80, 90 kilowatts. So
on a good day.
yeah, right. On a good day, you need a lot of,
So that's what you do. You basically charge the pack in the car, and then your extended one, you just go downhill a lot and slam on the brakes, and you
Oh,
just
is that what
slowly
it is?
charge it up that way, and then you go
Well,
plug in again, right?
I think that extra pack could be its own sort of thing. So it would have the smarts to charge at the right rate, and then there would have to be some brains there feeding it whatever power it can take. They'll definitely be less than the rest of the pack. So I don't know. It feels like it's not even completely engineered yet. Not even that it doesn't quite exist yet. It's not completely engineered yet. And that is a kind of a Tesla thing too. What I'd call just-in-time engineering. So anyway, I wouldn't be surprised if it disappeared.
Yeah, same.
Because they have ideas that they plan to do battery swaps. That was an idea that they when the
didn't
Model S
last
first launched. I mean, it never really made a whole lot of sense for your own personal vehicle. So
Fleet maybe, but not your home.
yeah, so it might go away. We'll see. We've also speculated that the low cost vehicle, which isn't on offer yet, might also go away. If they have enough demand for the higher end vehicles, why even make the lower end vehicle? So
Yeah, no reason to.
but we should say though, it wasn't really part of the event, but a lot of cool things did really come out about this Cybertruck, and I'm a little bit indifferent about its styling. I'm not really a truck person, though I'm starting to think I would like to drive this thing, just because of the technology.
That's the beginning of the end. You realize, when,
Is that how it works?
In before Doug buys a Cybertruck. Is
And
that
then the next thing is I have to get a mullet. What are you saying?
I think we're past that, Doug. I don't know that could happen.
I
that's
could do a
where your
mullet.
soul starts getting corrupted when you start driving the truck.
I'm sure there are plenty of uncorrupted souls driving trucks. But yeah, there's a lot of cool technology that came out that I'm frankly was surprised about. We'll just start with one. It was the drive-by-wire. We had this.
Dan O'Dowd was right.
Yeah, we had. This is funny, Chris, and you're kind of involved here because we had Dan O'Dowd on the show, and he requested to talk to us. So it wasn't like we sought him out.
Interesting. Okay.
And it was an interesting talk. Supposedly he sought us out because we tend to be. We're not like total fanboys. I mean, we're definitely Tesla fans.
Right.
But our main service is to the Tesla customer, and just trying to get in. And we care about reality, not necessarily hype. And so we had an honest discussion about it with him, and he was a little bit out there. And one of the things that surprised me was he had the sense that every Tesla vehicle was drive-by-wire. So part of his nightmare scenario of Teslas was that they would, like someone could hack them and they'd all lose control. I don't know if you saw this movie. What was it? It was on Netflix. It was called Leave the World Behind. And they have a pretty good scene where Julia Roberts is like walking through the sea of crashed Teslas. And
we could play this. We could play the.
Yeah. Let's go ahead. Let's do it since we brought it up. Let's see. Do you have it up here?
Yeah, I got it ready.
Here we go. All right. Don't copyright strike us. Whoever owns this, Netflix.
Working.
Oh yeah, we gotta talk
Yeah.
while it's playing so they don't strike you.
Oh yeah.
You know what? Hold on a second. I think I got to take it out.
All right.
There we
Well.
go. There we go.
Okay. Can you full screen that?
If I do, it's gonna lag.
It's gonna freeze.
Problem
Okay.
because we're on our thing.
Okay.
What would
All the
Tesla?
white Teslas.
Okay. So you see all these white Teslas, and they have the Tesla like a rear license plate or temp plate that says Tesla.
Yep.
Pretty eerie. And this is exactly the nightmare scenario Dan was talking about.
Yes, it is. This when Netflix posted this clip, and I reposted it, and I was like, "This is what Dan O'Dowd thinks FSD does right now."
Right.
Well, they like put it in your face, in a second.
Hey, Lewis, could you turn down the audio a little bit on the? Yeah,
Turn down.
that's good.
There it is.
He looks at this Moroni
Self-driving
sticker.
Safety features.
I've never actually seen a Tesla with the Moroni sticker on it.
Yeah.
I had I think mine was like paper, right?
Yeah,
Mine.
they just handed it to
They
me.
hand it to you.
Yeah,
But yeah.
but this is partially full
Oh,
self-driving
full
capability.
self-driving.
No! Oh no! It wasn't just full self-driving; it's full self-driving capable. And here they come.
Here
Here they
come.
come. It's like Jaws.
All the Teslas.
She's doing the math.
I mean, this is just what's going to happen.
Unavoidable.
Oh, well, let's wave them down. Wait, there's nobody in there.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Should we flag them down? Maybe they know something.
No one in that car.
There's no one in the car.
I thought it was supposed to have emergency braking. Why is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're holding up pretty well though.
Now, if Dan was actually involved in this, there'd be a bunch of mannequins with their heads popping off.
Children mannequins specifically.
Yeah, children. Yeah, children where their heads pop off.
Oh man.
Oh, that's great.
Anyway.
That's just great. That's
Ridiculous.
awesome
Future.
stuff. So Dan was under the impression that all the Teslas were drive-by-wire and that someone could hack into the car and take it over and drive away. And I had to point out, no car pretty much that you can buy today has drive-by-wire. They have power steering. There's an actuator that can adjust the steering, but you can overpower that actuator.
Not true fly-by-wire or drive-by-wire.
Yeah, and you still have a steering column that's a rack and pinion, and so you have physical control over this thing. You may lose your power steering, you may have to strong arm it, but you still have actual control. And I was really surprised that he didn't know that. And I made the joke, I guess, in a later episode that, like Elon, he's living in the future, and he thinks that's real now. But now it really is
Future
real.
is now.
Yeah, it is.
Turns out.
Do you have that image, Lewis,
Yep.
of the steer-by-wire? We could put that up. See, I don't see it yet.
There it is.
Okay. So yeah, this is pretty impressive. Can you get rid of whatever that side thing is?
I don't think I can.
Okay. So yeah, I find this pretty impressive. I'm not surprised. It doesn't really worry me. But yeah, it's real. I mean, we knew it was necessary for the rear steering, and when they talked about it, I'm like, okay, of course that's going to be by wire because they're not going to run some mechanical connection back there. But I just assumed that still in the front you'd have some kind of mechanical override, and even steer-by-wire systems that existed in the past, you still had a drive shaft that was decoupled by a clutch. And then if there's a safety issue, that clutch would close and you'd still have actual mechanical authority over the steering of the wheels. But here, I'm sure they can design a robust system that is unlikely to fail. But yeah, you're at the mercy of the system
Doug,
here.
Here's a question for you. Actually, for anybody here who wants to have some fun. Which came first, 48 volts or steer-by-wire?
Which came first, and by first,
Because the
in,
only
in
way
what
they have the
in what
steer-by-wire
domain?
is because of the 48 volt system.
I mean, okay. Is that how you're putting it? I mean,
how I'm putting it.
both. Certainly, the 48 volts. You mean for Tesla or for the whole?
For Tesla, because they make a big deal about how much power the steering takes.
Okay, yeah.
And
I mean,
the only way they can supply it is because of the 48 volts.
Sure, but they could have just had a separate step up for just the steering. They didn't have to do the full system 48 volts to do that. It certainly makes sense. 48 volts had made sense for years.
True.
Steer-by-wire has not necessarily made sense until recently.
Until rather recently.
Well, the jury's still out on whether it makes sense.
Okay. Okay.
But it certainly wasn't practical at all until recently.
Yeah. So anyway, what are your feelings on that, Chris, with the steer-by-wire and
I mean, I think it's great. That's kind of what Tesla's known for is always pushing, bringing new tech into the cars and being kind of the first to do these things. And I mean, I think it's going to be great. I don't have any, firsthand experience, of course, but the comparisons people keep making is that we've been throttle by wire for years and years and years. Those don't fail. There's a lot of brake by wire systems that are still, I think, like you said, they have a mechanical fallback, but though you don't hear about problems with those. Airplanes have been fly by wire, as you mentioned, Mike, since the 80s or something. I don't know, but that's what I've just been hearing. So, and those don't fail. So in a car, it's a new thing, but the tech itself and the idea isn't brand new. So, I mean, I don't foresee any problems. Tesla is usually pretty safe.
I think it should be fine. It does make the nightmare that Dan talked about possible. It makes it in the realm of
Sure.
possible, but it was possible when it wasn't steered by wire. That still could have happened. Those were Model 3s that were crashing. They're not steered by
right.
wire.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's cool. I do have to. I mean, sometimes I'm driving my car and it like reboots while I'm driving. Right, the screen goes black. Right.
But that
now-
could be the infotainment system.
Yeah,
it's,
exactly. So the system seemed pretty well isolated. Like I'll be on autopilot or FSD, and all my displays go, and I'm like, oh, but the car is still driving itself, okay? Or my brake is still working, navigation is gone. I'm not really sure how that. Maybe navigation still exists somewhere, even though I can't see it. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but it's definitely disheartening when, especially at night. Because the newer cars have some sort of accent lighting, but
it's in the dark.
but I think you can. Let's see. Have I lost headlights before? I'm not
I haven't
sure.
lost headlights.
It
Oh,
definitely
no.
typically it happens during the day, and then there's no way for me to turn on the headlights. So, but anyway, they seem fairly well isolated. It does freak you out, and I've had it happen at night. So I'm trying to think, did I have headlights or not? But definitely the inside of the car was completely black, and you're like, whoa.
Well,
Yeah.
I have, I had a passenger witness this. I actually rebooted the info system while driving on the freeway. I had to. I lost my display and the map glitched and completely froze.
Yeah.
So, other than
But yeah,
stopping
the actual the car itself, though, the car systems are real time, right? So like they're generally interrupt based embedded systems, or the real time operating systems. They are reliable, right? Like it's basically the type of software that Dan likes to tout that his company specializes in. That's what they do. They do real time OS based systems. The infotainment is like basically, a big Android phone, right? Like, yeah,
Sure.
that thing can crap out and reboot, whenever. It's not the same level of reliability. So I would imagine whatever system they have for this. And to be honest, I'm not even sure, like, the whole fear of, oh, somebody hacks into it. It's like, do you really think this is on the CAN bus and you're able to send commands to, like, maybe it could be an isolated communication. Just
Well,
for this.
they
we
did
know
for another brand, they were able to hit the brakes.
We
Sure.
know from like Comma AI and how that works that that stuff is on the can, right? Like
true.
Like the
Or-
steering
or-
and the braking is right on the can.
Or at least you can send commands to it. You can't necessarily interrupt with the own thing that it's doing, right? But yeah,
I think if
that's
you
fair.
can send commands, you definitely can interrupt it, right? I mean, you could probably
Yeah.
overwhelm it, right? You could just send a
Well-
counter command, and that's part of how.
points-
That's part of
points to
how.
a difference.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that points to a difference of what we're looking at right here with the Cybertruck. It's not CAN bus; it's gig ether, and they make a point about that. And they make a point about it's not ECU scattered through the car anymore. It's ECU
true. There is no
zones.
CAN bus.
Right? And I'm thinking, perhaps, hopefully, fingers crossed, there might actually be some security involved.
And so I see some comments in the chat, like Peter mentioned. It is possible, you're right, that it is all essentially on like a CAN bus or whatever their new Ethernet communication. I was thinking more of along the lines of the autopilot's working through the servos that are physically turning the wheel, no different than a human doing it, but the actual communication of the wheel itself's movement to the motors that are controlling the steering are all isolated. That's in my head how I initially think about how I would design the system. Is basically they're mimicking human input. So if you jerk it or override it, you don't have two competing signals going to the drive system. You basically have it's whatever the physical, encoders are for the chat. But again, I'm not a Tesla engineer. I don't know how they actually built it. So it is very possible it's through communications. And then the hacking scenario is potentially dangerous.
At any rate, I'm confident that they've done a good system here for the steer-by-wire. The sensors are triple redundant. At least for the front actuator, there are two motors. Either one could handle the load, but they both share it, assuming both are operating.
Right.
And what's exciting about it to me is that it opens up so many possibilities, right? It makes the steering a parametric system where it's not just the single variable of the turning the wheel, steering wheel turning angle, but also what is your velocity. It could have like different modes of like, well, what tires are you? What kind of traction do you have right now?
Plaid would love to be able to have that feature.
You could also have. I mean, I'm sure the car has accelerometers in it. You could also, change the feel or the ratio based on like, is there a bunch of lateral acceleration right now or whatnot. So there are tons of things you could do, and it's the kind of thing that could just get better. Like with the software update, you could just make it better. I mean, hearing people describe how they drove it, they were a little put off initially at low speed, because at low speed the wheels are counter turning so that you get an effectively shorter turning radius, and that felt a little bit too much, right? A little bit more than people expected. But that's something you could definitely dial in. You could change the ratio based on what your angle is. Like you could have like at low angles, it could filter out noise and small little rotations. But then as you get further turn, now typically it's resisting more as you're turning more. You could get more of a tire rotation, angle rotation, based on your wheel position. So anyway, I think it's cool. I'm really excited about that. I don't know that there's much more to add about the steer-by-wire at this point, but I think
I will
up a lot
say,
of possibilities.
Jason Camisa in one of his post interviews talked about how he got the Cybertruck 2 separate times. And the first time he got it, the steering, as you said, was too darty at low speeds, and it was just, he would barely turn it, and it was doing all this stuff. And he mentioned it to them when he kind of gave it back, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we can adjust that." And then the next time he used it, it was so much better. So they had already done a software update. On top of that, Kyle Connor had said that everyone is saying the rear wheels have 10 degrees of movement, and everything he was seeing, just he hasn't got his hands on a Cybertruck yet, but just in videos and stuff, he was like, those wheels are not turning 10 degrees. What are these guys talking about? And he got to talk to, when he was going through the line in the factory, the people who were working on some of the steering stuff, and they said, oh yeah, we're not there yet. It's at maybe 3 or 4 degrees right now, but through an update later, we're going to enable the full 10 degrees of rear steer for the rear tires.
So the capabilities there, they're just not using it yet.
Yep. And they'll be adding things and tweaking them as time goes on, as
Tesla
they do.
Signature item.
Definitely. Yes.
I'm waiting for the the sweet ass car that like pulls up parallel to a spot and then turns sideways
and then just
rolls
strafes.
right in.
I want to sort of strafe.
I want that so bad. Like, come on, give it to me.
Yeah, you couldn't quite do that. I guess you could.
Not
you could
with
do
10 degrees. You'd need more.
Yeah. You could do it with 10 degrees if you had the counter 10 degrees with the front, but it would be a lot of squeaking, right? Especially with some torque, with some torque vectoring, you could probably crab walk it.
Software. That'd be pretty cool. Crab walk in.
But awesome. You'll probably leave a couple millimeters of tire on the on the road. Well, so as Mike mentioned, another big deal is the 48 volt for the low voltage system. Did we lose Chris?
He's back.
Oh, there he is.
Here.
Okay. And the low voltage. So I guess for technical reasons, or I guess it's just labeling, anything below 50 volts is considered a low voltage system. And so you have this
in automotive.
In automotive, yeah. So
right. I think of 5 volts or lower as low voltage.
I was a utility lineman in the military, and for us, it was anything under 1,000 volts.
I was going to say for me,
it's all relative.
You guys are weird.
I was going to say for me, I was working on I was working on linear accelerators, and anything that doesn't break down the air is low voltage. Okay,
right, exactly.
Because we had like a huge some kilovolt system on the injector, and it was like the whole thing. We had electronics that had to work, and they were just all shifted. Like the ground was basically shifted up a kilovolt, and then you had like 60 hertz of 120 volts, but it was all shifted on top of on a kilovolt. And we'd get lightning strikes in the tunnel and stuff. It was something. But yeah, so but that's, to me, that's great. Just why does that matter? For our non-engineers, so power is the energy per unit time, right? So for electrical power, it's basically the voltage times the current, right? The voltage is the electrical potential. It's related to the force pushing the charge carriers along, and the current is the charge per unit time that's moving by. And so power is voltage times current. So if you multiply the voltage by 4, right, going from 12 to 48, you are able to reduce the current by a factor of 4, right, because they're linearly related.
And why does that matter?
It matters because what's called joule heating, like the energy that's lost to heat, right? That's not useful work, but just heat. That's the current squared times the resistance, right? So if we're able to reduce,
no, Matt.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm just
for our
I'm sorry, but
non-technical- our
no, but why it's
non-technical
important?
Viewers, it means skinny wires.
No, but what it means is if you reduce the current by a factor of 4, you've reduced the heating, the energy lost to heat, the power I should say, by a factor of 16, right? Because it's a square. That's a huge deal. So what that means is that we can effectively change the wire. So what does it actually mean? So the resistance in the wire, if you want to have the same amount of loss, the resistance in the wire is the length divided by the cross-sectional area. So that means we can divide the diameter of the wires by a factor of 4. That's what it means, right? So that means that you're able to lose a lot of mass in the wires, right?
Like I said, it's skinny wires.
Yeah, skinny wires.
Which are lighter, cheaper, potentially, depending on insulation. But yes.
And insulation, like the insulation you need for 12 volts versus 48 volts,
It's
is
pretty
like
basically the
I mean,
same thing.
basically the
Yeah.
same.
It's more about abrasion resistance than dielectric strength.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Especially,
Cool.
if efficiency is important, and not even just for an electric vehicle. I mean, all cars, they've effectively been becoming more and more electric over time. Like we used to have, you have the motor, and you had a bunch of belts going off the motor to do everything. You had a belt to run the brake booster. You had a belt to run to the
Power
compressor
steering
for
was
the
a
air
belt,
conditioning, a belt for the power steering, right? And all those have moved towards like, oh, okay, we just have a little motor that does that. So there's a larger power drain on the electrical system of your normal gas car. So being able to bump that up to 48 volts makes such a big deal.
Well, it was relatively recent that the CEO of Ford, in an interview, admitted to the fact that they had found extra 1.6 kilometers of wiring in their car, which equated to like 70 pounds, which equated to $300 worth of battery. These things matter. They matter a lot now. I'm excited to see where this 48 volt goes. I can see some pitfalls, accessories and trying to troubleshoot and deal with, a 12 volt world, and you're on a 48 volt car or truck.
Aftermarket speakers.
Well,
I was thinking more of my cooler that has to plug into the cigarette lighter.
I mean, hopefully the world would go to 48 volts internally. And it's pretty easy to have some kind of,
Well, Tesla gave away the document on how to do it.
right. But I mean, there must be, there's still 12 volts like around, right, for your accessories or whatever.
They say there is. I don't have a Cybertruck. Haven't seen one.
Chris, did you see any
Maybe
the
Chris
old
knows.
cigarette lighters?
I did not. No, I didn't.
That's
see
something that
in
should go away. The cigarette
Yes,
lighter thing
I
just
agree.
should go away.
Well,
That's
it's 12
ridiculous.
volt accessories now. It's not a cigarette lighter. No.
I still call
But,
it that though.
But we're all old, so we call it a
But you
cigarette
just,
lighter.
Yeah.
you just need a voltage divider, and you can get your 12 volts back. So
Okay, but they won't use a voltage divider, Jesus.
Speaking of olds, my God.
I mean,
hey, it's not
a
like I
vol-
said use a tube.
Yeah, but the voltage divider is it's lossy with resistors and stuff, but they just use a pulse modulated
They use
thing
a
right
jack.
Yeah.
there.
Like a, yeah. Anyway.
Only the
Wouldn't do a
electrical engineers would
rheostat,
appreciate
no
the
big
joke
deal.
there.
No.
Yeah, whatever. Let's just. Are we trying to go from 48 volts to 12 volts? Let's just burn away.
Yeah,
Get a
easily
big
burn the
resistor, call it a
difference.
day.
Yeah. Oh man, well, that's exciting. So I agree. I think 48 volt will be interesting to see. But probably. So I'm not a Cybertruck. Like, I think the Cybertruck's cool. If I was interested in a truck, sure. I'm not a truck person, even though I live in Texas. I'm not from Texas.
Not
I
sure
guess
how
that's
that
the
happened, you know?
I think that's the difference. I'm not from here. So I mean, I like Cybertruck, but I'm more excited about all this new tech that they're doing. You know, drive-by-wire, 48-volt. When are they going to pull that into other cars? When are all the improvements and things they're learning? In
I would
manufacturing.
expect
and,
sooner than later.
doing things.
mean,
I think it's going to be sweet.
manufacturing
So I'm
efficiencies
excited,
and
and next year, see what they do the year after. Like when are they going to pull some of these things in? I mean, the front camera. Hello, I would love that on on other cars. We've talked at
All
length
right,
about
you and
that.
Doug both,
Although,
yeah.
why is it not wider angle? I'm still
Yeah,
disappointed
I
with the
feel like
angle. Come on.
I feel like they missed the bus a
They
little
missed the
bit
mark.
on the front camera. It feels to me that all they're doing is replacing the fact that they're missing the ultrasonic sensors. And so that front camera, at least what I've seen on the Cybertruck, is just showing the front. But what I've been wanting is the car to have superhuman vision in terms of like seeing around corners. Like I thought there should have been cameras in the corners. And you don't necessarily have to have cameras in the corners if you have a nice wide angle camera in the very front. And this is, a year ago, I guess more than a year ago, I went to Vietnam and saw. I went to visit VinAI, and they had in VinFast they had a car that they had decked out with a bunch of stuff. And one of the things they had was this fisheye lens in the front that had a 170-degree view, and so it could see to the right, right in front of the car, right into the left. And I feel like that's what's missing out
Where's
of
our
a full camera
360
system.
camera view, man? Give us our 360 camera view. I want the bird's eye. I mean, come on, Tesla. Like,
Yeah.
I love it. You're doing a lot of cool shit with Cybertruck. Let's see the next. Now I'm already ready for the next big reveal. But anyway, we'll get there. We'll get there. They're making progress. Jones, I will not be ordering a Cybertruck tonight. My wife would not be pleased with me. It was bad enough I got the Model S Plaid just like on a whim. I did not need to buy a Cybertruck. I'll get a foundation. Chris, you getting a foundation? Let's do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know what? If I get that email that's like, "Hey, order," I don't know how I'm gonna resist that. But at the same time, I definitely do not make the kind of money where I can be buying stuff like that. I just don't. I mean, like the California people, they make tons of money, and it's a different world over there. And I made a joke online the other day about Bitcoin. Bitcoin's been skyrocketing. And I was like, oh, I knew I should have bought, a 1 Bitcoin for $16,000 a year ago or whatever. And someone's like, oh, yeah, I did that. I had to,
Yeah.
dog, I did not have $16,000.
Yeah,
Bitcoin.
the disposable income to just drop on
Okay.
on a risk like that.
I'm just, this is not stock advice. This is not investing advice. But I would just like to point out there, Bitcoin is up 150% in the last year. I'm not a Bitcoin person. Nvidia stock is up 233%. So you would have made more money buying Nvidia because of all the AI and the GPUs and all the stuff that
Well, obviously, all Bitcoin mining
Tesla.
they were doing,
So Tesla alone, XAI, or I should say Elon with XAI, right? They're spending billions of dollars on Nvidia GPU. So Nvidia stock has done more than Bitcoin in the last year. So that would have been your less risky bet if you had the 16 grand. But anyway.
So Chris, what do you even think about this foundation series? Is this just a money grab, or what is it? Is there any real benefit?
I wouldn't call it a money grab because it's supply and demand. Tesla, as of now, for the foreseeable future, meaning like the next 6 months or so, Tesla basically has unlimited demand. Why would they not charge as much as possible? And, they put the prices up, and a lot of people are like, oh, 80 grand, 100 grand. Like, what the heck? This isn't 50 grand. What are you talking about? And it's, but I have been saying this for a while that Tesla is very dynamic in their pricing. They're not going to let this opportunity go to waste. And I actually think what they did from a business perspective is very smart in that they know they have a ton of people that are super eager for this. And they're like, hey, it's 80 grand. And then they're like, oh, surprise, you want to order right now? It's actually a foundation special series for 20 grand. And you get FSD and you get the light bar and you get this. And
Do you actually get FSD?
That's part of the 20 grand. Yeah.
It's only $8 grand. It's not even that bad.
No,
my
no.
my understanding was the FSD wasn't even mentioned.
No,
So
it is that bad because if you are one of these early reservation holders, FSD was $7,000 when you reserve.
Oh,
And
okay.
Tesla said
Okay.
at reservation that they're
Okay,
going to
okay.
honor the original
Mhm.
$7,000. So this is
Okay.
another way for them to get, don't people are like,
But
oh,
I
you're
could get to
being
the
a
front of the
hater, I
line right
believe.
now, right? I could just wave money at them and I
I
get to the
don't.
front of the line.
I don't think so. No, it
Oh,
it
okay.
really seems to be that the early, if you're watching the reservation numbers, those early numbers are getting called. So my reservation number, I'm around 40,000th in line, right around there.
Mhm.
Oh,
I've
wow.
seen people slightly past me getting called to make a reservation, and then way in front of me and slightly in front of me. But as of today, Tesla's only offering this to Texas and California because if there are any issues, they want to be able to help those people and
Near,
fix the truck.
yeah.
Because the rest of the country isn't equipped to service them. So, the last thing I'll
So
say is, yeah, go ahead.
so they're paying more to be beta testers, is what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they're excited about it. And Tesla knows that they'll
I
pay.
believe the word you want to use is fleece.
Okay,
I really don't see it that way. I understand why you're saying that, but Tesla's offering it to them, and they're saying, "Hey, if you want it right now, here's the price. Go ahead."
Oh,
They could say no.
I understand the business side of it really
Mhm.
well. I get it, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to be
from a
negative about
customer
it.
point of view,
So
I
Yeah.
mean, if you have the money and you're willing to spend the money, it's not really a negative for the customer, right?
That-
It's a negative
that-
for people that aren't willing to spend the money.
Oh,
So it's not
well,
fair.
actually,
it's not,
I want to
Go ahead.
interject this last little bit. I just read yesterday that Tesla reinserted verbiage into the contract. You can't flip your truck again.
yes, they did for 1 year.
Yeah, they took
By
it
flip,
out,
you mean
and then
sell.
Sell, yeah. You can't.
see how that
you can't
goes.
Sell your truck.
Doug, are you
Yeah.
implying that you can flip a Cybertruck easily? No, sorry.
I know. I'm not. I'm not. I was like, I think you'd have a really hard time flipping that.
Okay, so Jones one in chat says he's reservation number 113. Bro, when you go and pick it up in
Wow.
Austin, you need to call me up and I'll come out and we'll go hang out and drive around in your Cybertruck.
Go
Well-
race the Cybertruck with the Porsche.
I think. So did I wonder if Jones or RN 113 would be a little later in the list because the reservation numbers are in the I think hundreds of millions, and so you can look at the first few numbers, and so like 112 will be the earliest. So I have two reservations. My first reservation is a 112, and then a little later than that is 113, et cetera.
Gotcha.
So I wonder if he's been invited, but yes, I waited. Yeah, he waited 3 days, and he's like, a couple 100,000 behind me probably, which is just
Gotcha.
so crazy.
Yeah. He's saying he just waited 3 days.
Yeah.
Slacker.
And then the last thing I do want to say about the Foundation series, which I think is kind of cool, is the branding of the Foundation series. Now, will this matter? It really depends on how many. If they're going to make 100,000 Foundation series, then okay, it's not really that important. But if you are some millionaire car collector, which I am not, you could order one of these, and in 10 years or 15 years, you have a special truck. And it's so funny because I was saying to my exactly, yeah, well, we see how that worked out as of today. But it was so funny because I was saying to my wife, I was like, what's kind of messed up about this whole Foundation series thing is that if we were like multimillionaires and could buy like 10 cars, we could easily buy one of these and then just hang on to it, not drive it very much, and then have, maybe make money on it in the future like people do with collector's cars. But because I'm like more of an average person and I would have to use it as my daily driver, I don't have the money to have like a secondary car to put all my miles on. I'm going to devalue this thing and like I'm kind of double screwed.
Are you saying you're not a Dan O'Dowd who just buys 2 Teslas? He
Oh
bought
my God.
one for parts and one to
No.
drive.
Well, he's a multi-billionaire. from
yeah,
my
yeah,
understanding.
he's got money.
He's a billionaire. I don't know if he's a multi-billionaire, but yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I thought
Who's quibbling?
so to put this stuff in some
What's
more
a billion
historical.
between friends, right? Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say to put this Foundation series, not Isaac Asimov, by the way, but to put this Foundation series in a more historical context, Tesla has done this from the very beginning. They had what they call the Signature series. So there's a Signature 100 for the Tesla Roadster that came out, and it had special badging. And because this was like this was a revolutionary car, the first EV sports car that people could buy. And what they did was there was a lot of value to the VIN numbers, right? So, people could get like one of the first 100 and you could see it right on the VIN number. But they did all this sort of engineering with the VINs because it didn't, like, typically it's supposed to represent order of production, right?
Sure.
Like if VIN 5 should be made, 3 later than VIN 2. But that wasn't the case at all. Like Tesla's just sort of making them when they can make them. And then at some point they decided, but the executives want a car and they also want a low VIN. So they came up with what they call the Founders Series. And so there was a Founders Series of like Elon got one, and I think Martin Eberhard got one. He got VIN number 2, but it was actually like the 5th one made because he got screwed over for some reason. And so it was they had value to it. So when they went to the European market, they had a Signature 250 that they actually had trouble selling. So then they did this again with the Model S, and they had the Founder Series. So I feel like the Foundation Series, it's like, well, it's like the Founder Series, but okay, these aren't executives or board members. So, let's call it the Foundation Series, so something slightly different. But it is a goal of many businesses. Can we basically sell the same thing to different people, but pay, have them pay what they're willing to pay, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this happens with airlines. It happens with anywhere the way they can try to.
Why coupons exist. It's why software has personal versus business versus student. It's
exactly.
Standard.
Exactly. So that's what I sense that this Foundation Series is that there's a ton of demand. People want the cars now. If there are people willing to pay more to get it now, then they'll do it, So that's what it is.
Are there so I'm kind of ignorant of this, the old, Roadsters, are there collectors ones that are worth a lot still? Like, I mean,
I don't really get that sense. I think you can buy one now for around 70, I think is what they're going for these days. And it really is what is the condition of the car. I don't know many people that care about the VIN. What they might care about is who owned it, right? More than that. And then it's the state of the battery, because that car would brick itself if you didn't. If you just left it, it will brick itself. The battery will get into such a low state of a charge that the battery is done.
It's a brick.
Yeah, exactly. And there's some sad stories of people that bought the cars and then put them in storage units, or even my car got in an accident and it had to go to the body shop, and the body shop didn't have the sense to plug the car in, and I got it back from the body shop and it's bricked. And most of the value is the battery. So that's a sad thing. Yeah.
I mean, I'll feel bad for that guy. I'm not sure I'll feel bad for, I bought some cars and put them in storage containers and never plugged them in. I mean, like, okay,
Well,
buddy, you can buy another one.
I mean, me as a fan of the car, I feel bad about it.
It's sad that the car went to waste. That's true.
And what's even sadder is that there are a couple of companies that will do like a restoration.
Yeah.
The battery swaps, but also some rejuvenate the batteries. And I don't want to name names right now, but there's one company that was doing that, and it's a delicate thing, and it's something you shouldn't leave unattended. And the whole warehouse went up and took out several cars, as well as a T0, which was a AC propulsion precursor to the Tesla Roadster. And that's terrible. And it happened twice. You think the first time you learn. Yeah, he did it a second time and burned up a bunch of cars.
Did he have insurance the second time? Because, my God, the first time, that bill must have been big.
Yeah. Friend of the show, Carl, I'm skipping on his name.
I remember
his
Carl.
second name. Yeah, his insurance went up because of that guy. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Medlock.
Yeah.
Or Medlock.
Yeah.
Yeah. Carl.
Yeah. Anyway.
He was a great
That's a
guy.
nice little
If you haven't
aside.
seen that episode, go watch that episode with Carl. That was awesome.
Yeah, we need to get him back.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, that was so lots of exciting stuff. So Chris, do you have any kind of rough idea timeline of when you think you might get the call? Like, are you expecting it this year possibly? You're thinking Q1, or are you thinking like, oh man, you'll be lucky in 2025?
No, at this point, It's been all over the place in my head. With the information I have now, I do think Q1 is possible.
Okay.
Especially with the invites that have been going out and seeing reservation numbers past mine. Now, as you all probably remember from the Model 3 days, your reservation number, your spot in line isn't the end all be all of, when you're going to get the car. They take other factors into account, but it does help to have an earlier reservation number. And I think once they start opening up, to more places outside of California and Texas, which from my understanding is supposed to be as soon as next month is when they'll start doing that, that I can hopefully, get it pretty early due to the price, the cancellations, certain people not wanting it. And, I'm number 40,000 in line ish, but how many people, even I ordered two. I'm not buying two. I ordered two because I didn't know which I'd be able to afford when it eventually was made. So I pre-ordered a tri-motor and a dual motor. And that was just so I could pick which one I wanted it, whenever it came up. Now it turns out that doesn't matter. You basically get to configure it when they send it. You can either pick a Foundation Series tri-motor or a Foundation Series dual motor. And so, I'm only picking one. I'm sure a lot of people did that. So yeah, there's no way to know for sure, but next year, 100%. I mean, and I really think Q1 is a possibility.
Nice.
Well, next year is only 3 weeks away.
Yeah. Well, I should say by the end of next year, 100%. But I think
wait. So you think you'll get a Q1? Because we were trying to make predictions about. One we've been talking about is how many by the end of Q1 will have been made, and we were all in the single less than
Sub
10,000.
10,000.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sub 10,000.
Yeah, I could see. I mean, it's all just a guess. I could see 10,000 in the first quarter. And, it depends on how the ramp goes and a million different things. Yeah. If, they are like, oh crap, we need to retool this stuff and they shut it down for 3 weeks, then okay, maybe not. But if things are going smoothly and, they can accelerate at a decent pace, then I think it's definitely possible that I could get it.
Also, they know who you are. So, as soon as they open up outside of Texas, they might go,
sure.
Here's a guy that does videos. We like him. I mean, they
Or
invited you to the event.
he does good videos for us.
Well, it's hard to say because, there's no denying Tesla knows who I am at this point, but it's not like I've ever had direct communication with a company that's like, oh, if you're ready to take your vehicle, we'll hook you up. You know what I mean? So as much as I would love that, that's never happened. And with my Model X so when the Model X refresh happened, we ordered one. We got so lucky because we ordered one, I don't know if you guys remember this timeline, but they refreshed S and X. It took a while, but the refreshed X, the Plaid, came out, but it was kind of slow. The X took forever. I mean, it was a year or something in between the shutdown of production and bringing it back. And we were waiting so long to get this Model X. And I kind of had that same thought. I was like, all right, at this point, Tesla has invited me to events. They at least know who I am. Maybe I'll get my X soon, and I ended up getting it super late compared to a lot of other people. So, which I'm not complaining about. I'm not special. They shouldn't put me ahead of anybody, but you never know.
So they know who you are, but they don't know who you are. No, I get it. No, and to be fair, not playing favorites is kind of a cool thing for the company to not necessarily do that, right? I think that's solid.
I agree. They know who I am, but maybe they just don't care. Is probably the truth.
That's probably more accurate.
Exactly. Yes. That would not surprise me in the slightest.
So you mentioned you had reservations for both the dual motor and the tri-motor. The difference between them I find kind of interesting, and I don't quite know the rationale behind that. So the dual motor has a permanent magnet motor in the rear and an induction motor in the front, and the tri-motor has dual induction motors in the back and a permanent magnet motor in the front. And I'm not quite sure why they did it that way. The one thing I do think is interesting about the tri-motor is they used to talk about it. They did something similar with the Model S. They used to be all induction motors, and so I guess the first sort of all-wheel drive Model S had induction motor both in the front and the back. And what they would do, I think they called it torque sleep. That's what they called it, torque sleep, where basically the induction motor would disengage, and then if you have no power going to the motor, it's just freewheels. So that's essentially what they're doing with the Cybertruck, the tri-motor Cybertruck on the highway. If you're not really using those rear motors, essentially become freewheeling. I forget what they're calling it. They're not using the torque sleep term anymore. I guess they're just disengaging it or disconnecting it, as opposed to what they're doing with the semi, which uses permanent magnet motors. But when they're not in use, there's like a clutch that actually has to, disengage so that so it's not just like a load on a motor that's not being energized. So anyway, that was interesting, but I don't know quite the rationale to have the opposite tack for the dual motor versus the tri-motor.
I mean, my understanding, at least from the Plaid side, because the Plaid has permanent magnet motors
In the rear.
Is for performance, right? So the permanent magnet gives you more performance. But like you said, the negative is efficiency of disengaging, or it's more complicated, having a clutch mechanic or something like that. But yeah, so I don't know. That's an interesting point. I didn't realize that the tri versus the dual motor in the Cybertruck was different.
A permanent magnet, in theory and probably in practice, would be faster off the line because you're not waiting for a field to be built in the stator to get going.
It's actually instant torque.
Yeah. I heard. Speaking of which, I heard Sandy Monroe did an interview with a bunch of executives at Tesla, and it was a great interview, by the way. I think it came out just like 2 days ago. And one thing I heard someone say, they talked about, well, that's how we get 2.6 0 to 60 rollout removed. I heard him add rollout removed. So it's not really 2.6. It's like, you get that chance for it to like start up a little bit, and then it's 2.6. But I hadn't heard that anywhere else except this one guy had it rollout removed.
That's how they all are, actually. Like even the Plaid's 1.99 is rollout removed. They always have like an asterisk on it, and they they try not to. Now I don't know that that's true with treated surfaces and stuff. Maybe you can do that without rollout, but I'm pretty sure it was
before the Plaid. Tesla had never used that terminology, even though that was kind of normal in like the ICE world. When you quote your 0 to 60s, or when your manufacturers are advertising it, it was a regular thing to have the little star with the rollout removed. And Tesla had never done that before. And then when the Plaid came out, that was the first time they put the star and 1.99 with the rollout removed. And everyone's like, well, I see why they're doing it. They want the less than 2. Everyone else does it. But yeah, so you need that for the tri-motor. They don't do that for the dual motor. So it's pretty funny.
Yeah, because I was thinking, you have that little bit of time for a field to get built up. And so I guess, I don't know how long that is, but with the rollout removed, that we don't know because they've just deleted it. As opposed to like a Plaid with PM motors in the back, they wouldn't have that issue. So.
Right.
Well, I mean, I don't know that most, Chris is going to be racing the Cybertruck when he gets it. Do you have a feeling yet for if you're going to go dual or tri? You think you're
dual.
gonna do
Dual all day.
Dual.
The only reason I reserved the tri-motor was because the 500 miles of range. I am I'm an efficiency and utility person. Those are the two things I want out of most things in my life. And Cybertruck really brings all that home for me. Now, in the world of EVs, it's obviously not the most efficient thing, but in the world of pickup trucks, it's the most efficient thing. And you get all that utility of a pickup, along with the stainless steel with no paint, so you don't get scratches. It'll scratch, but you're not going to scratch your paint, which will then rust, and you're not going to get dents. Whereas the roads I drive on, all the dirt roads, all of my cars have had at least some of their paint tore up a little bit because of the rocks, and I drive along brush that brushes up against it, and it's like, well, whatever. That's what I have to do. So I'm really excited for this no paint stuff, but 100% dual motor. There, for me, there's no reason to get the tri. I want the most range I can get. I don't want to spend an extra 20 grand for half a second faster 0 to 60. I mean, just to me, I know people want it. To me, it makes no sense. So yeah, definitely dual.
Makes sense. Looks like Jones agrees. He's also doing. I mean, Jones, you already got a plaid. You don't need a Tri-Motors Cybertruck. It's like all the people that have a plaid S and a plaid X. It's like, do you really need the X to be a plaid too?
Yeah.
You don't need it, but they're just doing it because they're flexing.
In your walking around the factory, I mean, I know you're not like a manufacturing type person, but one question I still have that I haven't quite had answered is, I don't know how the body panels are affixed to the rest of the car, right? Because the rest of the car, like the castings are aluminum, right? And this is steel, and obviously you don't. I mean, I guess you could, but you wouldn't necessarily want to weld aluminum to steel because you have some galvanic, reactions there. Is it just glued? I was gonna assume it's just glue, like structural glue.
I think Sandy's talked about this, unless you know, Mike. But no, I can't answer that. I'm not sure.
I watched the Sandy video, and I don't know that I got that question answered there.
At this point,
talk about how the panels were attached.
Yeah. Yes. He has like. Go ahead.
All right. He did talk on the castings, how they had multiple pieces of the castings, and they would weld the castings together.
Yeah.
But he didn't bring up how the panels were attached.
Yeah. So, I mean, because the panels are part of the structural rigidity of the vehicle. I mean, that's part of like why, I mean, at least in terms of what they've been saying.
I mean,
yeah.
Are they still saying that? Because like I know that was the plan. Are they still standing by? Okay.
They are in the sense that like there's very little like the torsional stiffness is very high, and part of that is because you have these panels that are holding the thing together. I mean, obviously you have a core. It's clearly not a total like exoskeleton where like the inside is all loose on the outside, but the outside really is adding stiffness to the vehicle. So I'm still not
Gotta
sure
have
how
an
it's
adhesive that's
attached.
really strong. Then yeah.
I mean, going back to the Lotus days when Lotus produced the Roadster bodies, there was a lot of structural adhesive holding that vehicle together, and there's structural adhesive in the S and the X and the 3. So
if you look at,
suppose they could do that.
If you look at the teardowns that Monroe did on the Y in particular, the Giga castings are primarily glued in place.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're slip fitted together with a structural adhesive. He was in there with a rather large torch heating these things up to take it apart.
So yeah, so I'll be interested to see how this works. When I went to see the Cybertruck at when I went to go see the Cybertruck at the mall at a mall in Maryland, we saw, as I showed you guys last time, there were some scratches, and it had something that looked like a pretty big dent on the thing. I mean, it was shallow, but it might have just been that's what that panel was like.
It's the baseball.
Oh, whoops! You were supposed to hit the glass, not the stainless steel.
Because we've seen video of them hitting the thing with a sledgehammer and just people just kicking it and stuff. So maybe it was just in how the thing got made.
Well, they do have some pre-production units in the stores as well. So, I mean, not trying to make excuses, but it could be the story on that one.
You're just trying to get yourself bumped up in that reservation line.
Yes, everything Tesla does is perfect. I love Cybertruck. I'll pay you all the money.
I mean, what about insurance, man? Like I'm thinking about repairs and stuff. Insurance has got to be killer for this thing right now, right?
I've seen reports. People are reporting in that Tesla's own insurance company is over $5,000 a year, just for the truck.
Oh man, I've seen normal quotes too. I've seen some people ask for quotes and their insurance. So maybe this won't stick, but their insurance company basically put in, I think, Model X insurance for it because they didn't.
Oh yeah, they didn't know, so they just said Model X.
Yeah, and so then they were like, "Yeah, this is what you'd pay." So I mean, who knows if that'll hold up? But yeah, I should get a quote. I should ask because that Michigan has the highest insurance rates in the country, so I might be in trouble.
Oh really? I thought California did.
Wow.
No, Michigan's the worst.
I'll tell you what, my insurance doubled or tripled when I switched from California Tesla insurance to Texas Tesla insurance.
Really?
So yeah.
Wow.
Tesla is not an ideal insurer in Texas, in my opinion. Like I looked at it and it was not a deal for me. So I do not have Tesla insurance.
Funny because out here in California, the Tesla insurance was $700 cheaper than Auto Club, which is who I had before.
But it's interesting when you think about like what kind of stuff the Cybertruck might get into. It looks like, at least the way they've been talking about it, that it's impervious to all the sort of like parking lot, grocery cart kind of stuff.
It's going to be
but
a
then,
throwaway truck.
but then when you get to the point of I had
Something broke.
well, I don't know, ran into a pylon or something, where the shock features actually had to deform. Like, what do you even do at that point? Because you have a whole casting. The casting deforms. I think the car's done, right? Even
The casting's a throwaway. Yeah.
But
If you hurt the casting, you're done.
say you had a side impact that was enough to actually crease the door or even bend it. What do you do? Are they able to
Close the
replace
door.
that panel or what?
I'd say they replaced the entire door.
Yeah, a door is probably your best case because you could just take it off and put another one.
But those panels, I mean, those castings, they've already said straight up, if you read the actual Tesla body shop repair manual, if there's any damage on the casting, it's a write-off. Don't even, there is no provisions for a repair on the casting.
Really? When was that from?
Last year when I looked at the manual.
Oh, okay. Because okay. I mean, I don't know that much about this stuff, but I had remembered that was a big deal. I remember that happening. And then some information came out about there was some type, I shouldn't even say it because I don't know exactly, but there was some type of walkthrough on repairs you can do to it that would put the rigidity back to basically the same as it was before, with some type of welding, or I can't remember what it was, but
Well, you could take the casting out and recast it. And
yeah.
Smash it back into place.
Melt it.
Yeah, get your torch out and have at it.
Yeah. So Peter's saying it takes a lot of skilled welding. So I'm not sure if that's what it was, but
can
I'd be
imagine.
interested. I mean, you guys seem to know a lot more about that kind of stuff than me. It'd be interesting for you to look that up and see what the latest is on that, because
welding on anything that's cast is tough and not always well received in the welding community. Because you don't know what you're welding into. You don't know what's inside the casting when you start working on it.
what do you mean by
There
that?
may be voids, or it may be material contamination. It's really hard to say.
I agree with Danny, who posted,
What's
it's
that?
a post-apocalyptic. No, I can't even speak.
Right, it's supposed to be messed up.
Apocalyptic truck. It's supposed to look messed up, right? Like if you're worried about dents and scratches and dirt, like come on, man.
Seriously.
That's what it's for.
Yeah, this is what I've been saying to people, because people are like, "Oh my gosh, it's gonna scratch." Dog, if
It's
you
a
are
truck.
worried, if you're worried exactly, if you're worried about
Don't buy that
scratches,
car.
buy something else. That's not what this
Right.
is for. If I get a dent in my Cybertruck, I'll be like, "Oh, that's cool." Like, who cares? It doesn't
Actually,
matter.
You should be impressed because of how tough it is. I mean, so if you did something to dent it, that's an impressive amount of force.
If I did something to dent it, it would have cut my other car in half. Okay, so I'll be like, "Oh, good job, Cybertruck. Let's
or
keep
you
driving."
just
This-
threw a baseball at it.
This is going to be more child mannequins. I hit a child mannequin.
now."
That head was pretty hard to
actually-
pop off.
That's right.
I can actually run them over in my, Model Y. I had to stop the car.
Chick sticks guards.
That's exactly, yeah. No, that's who cares?
Hey, Chris, you talked about it a little bit, but we have a question, and he says, please break down the reservation numbering, because it's a mystery to me too. I haven't actually paid attention to it, but you started to talk about it.
Yeah, that's fine.
What do we know from it? Yeah.
So I think I have mine on my phone. I don't know the exact number, but there are calculators that you can use online that start with, again, I think it's 100 million number. So it's like 112 million, blah, 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 blah. And there's a base number that people somehow have figured out. I don't know exactly how they did it. And you can subtract, take your reservation number and subtract that base number from yours. And that will tell you what place in line you are, approximately. Of course, it's not perfect, but there are calculators online you can use. And if you just Google, just Google like Cybertruck reservation calculator, you just plug in your reservation number, it'll do it for you, and it'll tell you approximately where in line you are. Now, when you get past a certain point, this breaks down because a year or 2 years after reservations opened, Tesla moved all reservation numbers for all vehicles in together. So for a time, Cybertruck had its own unique kind of thing, and then the news articles were coming out were like, oh, according to this tracker, Tesla has 1.8 million reservations, and as Tesla does, I think they didn't like people tracking it, so they kind of jumbled it up. But it's just as simple as that. If you have a 112 reservation number, you are very early. You're like day one, and then it goes from there.
But when you say 112, you mean like a prefix, like 112, right?
Here, hold on. Let me just get mine
Yeah,
for you really
he
quick.
says like 112 million, or
Yeah.
whatever.
So
like,
yeah, but let me just read it to you so I don't confuse anybody. By
But
saying
it's
that.
interesting that they why do you need to obfuscate? Why isn't it just your actual order? Why is the reservation number your actual reservation number? Like, why is it?
It is your
some
reservation
obfuscated. No, but it's some obfuscated thing. It's not actually your place in line. It's you have to do some kind of conversion.
I have no idea. So my reservation number is 112789, and then I'll say 000. I don't want to give away my exact one. It probably doesn't matter. I've seen plenty of people post them publicly, but so
Yeah.
it's my
no doxing Chris.
Yeah, don't call Tesla and be like, hey, I want to cancel this reservation number for
Yeah, just so I can move up.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm scared people do. But so 112,789,000, and so 112 is the lowest of the first three numbers, and then the next three people have like 1125. That's I think the lowest I've seen. 1128, stuff like that. So.
I mean, if they wanted to, they could have just had a random number generator and then just had a lookup table on their end.
Of course, and that's eventually basically what they did by mixing it in with all the other models. So there's no tracking it anymore. But if you're within the first like week, you should care. If you're past the first week, the numbers get so high, it's like don't even think much about it because so many people reserve. I mean, mine is okay. I said around 40,000. I reserved the night of the unveil. I mean, it wasn't immediately when it opened up, but it was, within probably an hour or something, and 40,000. So,
right, and given the way production ramps work, if you're near the end, it's not going to make you're talking probably the difference of weeks or something.
It probably doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
Right.
True. Oh man. So, any other thoughts, questions, comments? Anything for Chris? We have, the expert at the event. Got to see all the cool shit.
Yeah, they had all the the famous Cybertrucks on display, which is very cool. They had the one that was shot. I went right up and touched the bullet holes. And then they had the crash tested ones there. I put all the I made a video.
It's bullet dents. Bullet dents.
Bullet dents. Yes, exactly.
Well, you get some holes if they doubled up, right? Because it's left at some point when you get
There was enough metal deformation that it,
Yeah, it's sort of more likely to crack than bend at that point. So that's what you get is like a little crack, a little hole in the thing. So
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So make sure, folks, then if you're interested in seeing that, check out Dirty Tesla's channel on YouTube. He's got a video on there, so you can see his live recorded reactions when he was at the live event.
Yeah.
It's no longer live. It happened in the past. That's how time
That's right.
works. All right.
that's how time works.
God,
I mean,
wasn't
me
sure
saying
how
right
that
now,
worked, yeah?
me saying
Right.
right now isn't even right now because I said
Right.
now
Well-
moments ago.
That's
Yeah,
right.
But you've got common time. You've got Tesla.
We're not going to talk about time.
Yeah.
You have two physicists on the call, and Doug and I could be here all night splitting hairs. So
It's all relative.
it's all relative, exactly.
The only constant is the speed of light.
All right. That's a good question.
Yep.
Scott Harper asked, are the tires foam insulated like the Continental RX?
Yes.
Yes.
That was in one of the reviews. I think the Haggerty review. They mentioned that. Yeah.
So that's why they were floating on the snow in the video we saw today.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yep.
Oh, man.
I guess we should point to that. There was a video recently, which I think is ridiculous for anyone to have any issues with Tesla. I mean, clearly it's an issue of traction.
It's traction.
And
it's traction.
and it's-
It's
and
just
it's-
the wrong tires.
it's the tires, right? The car's got torque for days. That's not the reason it needs somebody to pull it out, right?
And it's super heavy. So it's not that it needs to be loaded up with sandbags. It just needs tires.
or some chains on those tires.
Or
you
chains
know?
on the tires.
Well,
yes.
chains were listed as an accessory for an obscene amount of money.
Now, I'm surprised the car doesn't have what one of the
chains.
features. Well, a Knight Rider had this like traction control, and you see these little spikes would come out of the tires.
right.
I remember that.
So, Elon, why haven't you done that yet? What's up? What's the holdup?
Where's our James Bond reinflating tires?
That's
I
next
mean, there's
year's
so many
upgrade.
things we should have that we don't have.
Where's the stealth mode from Die Another Day? What's going on?
Right. Now we do have it sort of floats.
It floats.
Right? Yeah, I was gonna say they gave us one of them. It kind of floats, sort of. Are you planning on water testing your Cybertruck, Chris? And you get
I was
Wade
until
mode.
they didn't.
It's called Wade
yeah,
mode.
Wade mode. Yeah, until they didn't talk about it. But I think maybe what I'll do, don't record this part, but I will back a boat into, I'm at the boat launch and I went too far. And then, if something bad happens, then insurance will help me out. If it floats, then, I got a banger video right there.
I don't think insurance will help you out when you tell them that you plan to do it.
No. We stopped recording. We're not
Yeah,
recording.
we're not recording. Nobody's seeing this.
Nobody's
Putting
seeing
the
this.
boat in.
Yeah, it goes one of two ways. Either you got a cool video and it works out great, or you got a video like that the Model X that was went into the water a couple.
It went in the water and it caught
caught on
fire,
fire.
and the fire
Underwater.
department decided we're just going to let this do its thing.
That was pretty dope.
Crazy.
That was pretty dope.
Well,
Yeah,
let's be clear now. So the Wade mode that has been mentioned, they say that they pressurize
The battery.
so that you don't get, I guess, the salt water ingress in it.
You don't get a short in the battery.
But that's very different from what was talked about before.
Yes.
So wading is still like in the water, it's still not floating, right? Tesla talked about, or Elon talked about the
it
thing
was supposed to
floating,
float. Yeah.
and it was supposed to get an outboard motor, so you could drive it like a boat, like that Knight Rider boat they had on The Simpsons once, right?
That's like the jets are supposed to be on the Roadster.
Okay, first they said $40,000. Then they
Okay.
said 500 miles. Then they said it could float. Now you're killing me, guys. Come on.
Right. So
I
we
thought
have
you
no
want me to
floating,
buy
no
this thing.
range. Yeah.
Well, that's a good question, though. We talked about would it float. I think it probably could. The issue is water displacement, right?
Displacement, yeah.
So, but would you have control authority if it floated?
Unlike
There have been
You
examples.
put really big fins on the tires, so similar to like
There've already been examples of a Model S floating, and you could kind of steer with all-wheel drive because the wheels are turning, and you're kind of kicking up some water, so you could kind of steer. But you're still like, if there's any bit of like a current or there's
Current,
flash flooding
you're
or
done.
whatever, you're done, right? So
I'm only laughing, Doug, because my Model 3, not mine, but some Model 3s look like sieves as it is. I mean, I'm not sure it would ever float long enough to care.
well, the other issue with the Model 3 was that the rear bumper was like a I don't
was a
know, it just
scoot.
cupped the
It was
water.
a scoot, yeah.
And if you're driving at I don't know
Air
40
brake.
miles an hour like one might do, and you drive through a puddle, just like shear off your rear bumper because the water just goes right in there. So
an air brake.
a water brake.
Yeah, water brake. Oh man. I think we have another question for Chris. Tim asks, do you think Cybertruck will be delivered with FSD 12?
Oh boy.
That's some wishful
I-
thinking.
Oh,
Yeah,
boy.
you know what? I think that their goal is, I've said this plenty of times, is to get it out by Christmas or for the holiday update, I should say. I think that that's an internal goal. Are we going to see that or not? What I will say is look at the holiday update, the picture that the Tesla account posted where they show the advanced, park assist, where they like kind of form the world around the car.
Right.
I think that they are showing us V12 stuff in that. I think that you're going to have the car, and Elon has talked about this in the past, visualizing much more of the world around you, almost like we've seen in their demo videos over the years, where they show like how the car kind of recreates the world as it's driving. I think that's kind of our first hint at that. So I do think we're really close. But
I can't wait.
oh,
Give it to
I'm
me.
very
Give
excited.
it to me.
But Cybertruck comes with hardware 4, which Elon said will be behind hardware 3 for a while. It comes with the front bumper cam, which new evidence shows that's not actually going to be part of FSD, which makes no sense to me. Like, come on. Yeah, like
Because you can definitely see those little kids over the
ridiculous.
well, that was my question. Essentially what you're saying right now is like, will the Cybertruck even be delivered with FSD? Because all the test drives we've seen, autopilot wasn't engaged, autopilot wasn't available. And I assume FSD as well. So do they even have it trained up and ready to turn on for, normal people as they
It
get
doesn't
it?
seem like it right now. So yeah, and that's how even hardware 4 cars,
Hardware 4.
yeah, was lacking when it was first delivered and all. I think autopilot wasn't even on, but that was
Right.
like a week or something. But still, yeah, that's definitely possible.
I was super envious of all the hardware 4 people until I saw like, oh, but you can't actually use it, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll wait.
Well, that's again the Tesla way. That's what happened with hardware 2, right? The Tesla, the hardware 1 or whatever you want to call it, that was done with Mobileye, and then so Mobileye was like, we're not really happy with you guys just training your AI off of what our system does, and so that ended, and Tesla pulls Mobileye from their newer cars, but they weren't at feature parity yet. So yeah, people at hardware 2 were behind for months, right?
Yep.
If anyone remembers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. This guy says, I can't wait. Tesla Vision is a joke. So, Chris, you've been testing the latest FSD stuff. Do you still feel like the slope is positive? I got the update overnight, and I had to go pick up someone from the airport, and it did some shocking and surprising things to me in that short trip that I hadn't seen before. I'm on the road, and it's supposed to be the road's going to the right, and for some reason it just jumped onto the shoulder. There was kind of a large shoulder, and it just went on the shoulder and it just drove essentially off what you're supposed to be driving on. And I'm like, oh, and I had to grab it and take it back, and it never did that to me before, and I was wondering if that was the update or what. I later figured out that navigation had missed a turn, and I don't know if it was trying to correct or thought it could get away with a U-turn on a highway, but it was, on the interstate. So I don't know what was going on, but what's your latest experience with that?
Yeah, pretty flat for a while. We got a decent upgrade, in my opinion, with version 11 in certain aspects, like especially highway just became so much better when they finally enabled FSD on the highway. At least that's been my experience. I enjoy it far more than I did navigate on autopilot. But the other, on-street features, there's improvements. And, if I compare what I have today versus a year ago or a year and a half ago, it is significantly better. Even though in the moment you're like, oh, what the heck, why are you doing all this stupid stuff? It has improved big time. But in the past, like maybe 6 months or 9 months, in my opinion, it's been pretty flat in terms of the changes. And actually, I've had more negative things come up in my software that I constantly am posting about on X. So when I first got version 11 with the highway FSD, I had a thing where I have a weird part of my highway where there's an exit on both sides at the same time. Yeah, that sounds real smart, right? And there's only 2 lanes. So everyone's slowing down it's the stupidest thing. Well, for whatever reason, FSD, when it was going past the left side exit, you don't normally have an exit on the left side, would just drift into that exit on the highway. We're going 70 and it's just like, oh, here we go, with no turn signal or anything. So I posted about it on X, and Elon Musk responded to it, almost right away. And he's like, are you on this latest version? And when he responded, they had pushed an update that day. So my video was from the day before. And I said, well, no, but I will go test it on this new one and I'll get back to you. So I went out on the newest version that he was quoting. It did the same thing. I posted it on X and I was like, here you go. Here's your update. And, I don't know if he's going to see it or anything. And almost right away he responded and he said, noted. The next update, it was fixed. It never started happening again. Okay. So he sees my stuff on there sometimes. I don't know how all this algorithm stuff works, but sometimes he'll see my stuff. So now I have these, I don't want to get too into it, but I have a lot of complaints. If you go look at my X profile and my YouTube, I complain about them all the time. These mistakes that Beta makes constantly, always does the same mistakes. And I've been posting about them for months. He doesn't respond to it. It doesn't get fixed. And one of these mistakes is kind of dangerous. And I'm like, what's going on over there? Like, I know you guys are seeing this feedback. Why don't you, we've gotten updates in the months I've been complaining about this. Why isn't it being fixed? So I'm a bit frustrated on those things that didn't used to be problems. And now they are. Because if those couple of issues I have, honestly weren't there, I would be having good drives, like almost every drive. So
maybe they feel like we're pushing on the next version, and so like if we're working on 12, and it doesn't make sense to step back to 11 to fix that.
Well, for sure, I hear that, and I've heard that from a lot of people, and I agree with you to an extent. But the problem,
I don't necessarily believe that, but it's just an idea.
Well, no, it
Devil's
is an idea.
Yeah.
And well, the problem with that is we got an update that brought these bugs, and we've gotten like 3 or 4 more updates ever since those bugs were introduced over the 6-month period, and they're still there. So they're doing something with version 11 still, even though version 12 is coming. And if they weren't updating version 11, I'd be 100%. Yeah, they probably just don't care. Even though this is a dangerous thing that's on thousands of cars on the road, they should be fixing. Right. They're focusing on version 12. So
it's really the challenge. I mean, the thing that's difficult, and it's why experts will even say, like, there's no guarantee that FSD or that actual self-driving cars are going to be, available tomorrow or in 5 years or whatever. Like, we don't really know, because the type of learning that neural nets do and the type, these systems do is effectively, as you feed in more data, it may improve in some areas, it may get worse in other areas. It's not like it's just all net positive gain. So part of the problem is, as they tweak things and they try to get it, do better in this scenario, it's going to potentially get worse in other scenarios, right? Like it's non-deterministic in how it's learning. And so that definitely, creates these, it makes it hard. So they really have to try a lot of things, throw a lot of data at it, tweak a bunch of stuff. And it's like a game of, that's the running joke, right? Is, 1 step or 2 step forward, 1 step back, or 1 step forward, 2 steps back with it. And that's really how it's going to behave. And we see that with everything, right? Even things like ChatGPT. If you look at, like, people will complain like, the latest update came out and now it's giving me worse responses than it gave me before. And people are accusing them of lobotomizing the models. And it's just like, That's just the nature of machine learning and how these things work. So it's not just easy.
I'm not convinced it's all machine learning, though.
It's fair. It might not be.
Well, so and I'm listening to all you guys talk about, the FSD thing, and I'm thinking back over the last several weeks. I upgraded my side marker cameras to the very latest, maybe a year ago, and got better quality camera out of it to get rid of that light leak issue they had. And I tend to have the view on where you can see what the side marker sees when you got the blinker going.
Mm-hmm.
Up to the very last update, where they actually enhanced how the cameras worked, they were pretty reliable. Ever since that update, there's been a much more pronounced tendency for flare, especially with low sun or bright lights at night, to the point you can't see anything out of the side marker camera.
Sure.
I've also noticed at the same time that some of the routes I've taken FSD on no longer work quite as well as they used to. Cause and effect? Don't know. I don't have any empirical evidence. This is all just me observing.
Right.
But I kind of wonder if maybe an improvement in one thing had some unintended consequences on something else.
Yeah, good. I mean, let's be honest, right? Like, wipers still suck.
This is a
right?
very
Everyone
complicated
unanimously
system.
agrees. Auto wipers are terrible.
Auto
I still have a
wipers.
thing in my car. I've got, so my car is a little over a year now. It's a 2022. So I guess it's it's coming up. But Model S Plaid, and when I go to back out of my driveway, sometimes I just have to wait because the rear view camera feed just doesn't show up on the screen. I go into reverse and everything's black, and it's just like I just sit there and wait and go, all right, well, I want to be able to see out the back of my car before I back into a child, like crossing
Does
my
it
driveway.
self-correct,
or
or do you have to shift out and
I
back?
don't have to do
into
anything.
it?
It'll fix itself, but I just got to sit here and wait, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. like weird stuff like that. It's like this shouldn't be a thing for a car that cost me $150,000 at the time, right?
Yeah.
But it is what it is, and I'm still super happy. I love the car. I love the power. I love FSD, even though it sucks. And I hate it. I love it because it's still better than anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's better
it's a
than anybody else's
love-hate
system.
relationship. And I think that's just part of being a Tesla fan.
I got a question probably for you, Lewis. With the difference between 11 and 12, the main difference was 12, the decision making is based on a neural net as opposed to just the interpretation of the environment. In the current version that we're using, when the car does something, it gives us a little explanation for what it's doing, right?
Yeah.
Moving out of the far right lane or getting out of the passing lane or whatever.
Right.
Is it gonna still be able to do that for us if that's no longer a programmed? I guess that would have to be a trained thing also. Like,
It is,
if you do
yeah.
this, tell it to say this. But
Yeah,
how are we
so
gonna
it's-
know that that's what it's actually meant to say, right?
Right. It's a there are techniques. It's a hard problem, especially at one of my companies I worked at a few years ago. That was one of the main problems we focused on is explainability in neural net based models, right? Because you have these neural nets, you pop in some, you give some inputs, it pops out an inference, it gives you some data out of it, and you're like, why did you decide that? How did you decide that, right? And it's explainability in neural nets is an ongoing field of active research. It's not perfect, but it is much better, and I'm pretty confident that they'll have appropriate layers, they'll have appropriate training and things in there where will give us some rationale for why it's doing what it's doing. It shouldn't be like they had to teach it what to say. Like, it shouldn't be like that. It should more be that they're going to map certain they'll basically map certain signals to canned answers probably. So I don't think they're gonna be generating like the cars. So you won't get like unique messages each time. They'll probably just go, hey, based on these signals, we've decided to change lanes because this is coming up or whatever. But I honestly feel like a lot of those messages today aren't even with the regular driving. A lot of that is more with the route planning, and some of that. And I'm not sure that stuff's really different. They talk about, we're consolidating all these models, we're getting all this code to be better, yada yada. It's like, yeah, are you? Like, to which part? Because there's, like you said, there's the part where it's like understanding the world around you, the basically doing observations, figuring out like object identification, right? What are things, doing prediction of where things are moving. All of those things they've been slowly adding more and more. So I think they're going to have decisions like, okay, I need to slow down, I need to speed up, like those types of things. But are we going to get messages for all of that? Probably not. And most of the messages are the route planning. I don't know that they're going to be changing the route planning just yet. But we'll see. But yeah, no, I'm hopeful that they will still be giving explanations. If they don't, I think that's a huge negative. So like they should focus on that. But they definitely have the talent and the people know how they can definitely do explainability. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just laughing. I see people in the chat talking about the wipers. I didn't mean to open that can.
Yeah, honestly, that's the most embarrassing bit because I'll be driving the car and just out of nowhere, the wipers will just come on and someone asks, "What's that?" And it just does that.
Shrug.
And also, I can tell this must be part of the training. Like sometimes it gets overcast, but it's not raining. It's just overcast, okay? And I think the cameras. Oh, if I see a gray sky, that must mean. And I'll get a message. FSD might be degraded due to weather. Dude, it's just cloudy. It's not raining at all. There's the road is bone dry, and you get the you get that. You don't just get a message. You get a little noise, and someone, what's that? What was that? It's just doing its thing, and then wipers will start going. Dude, you're not gonna wipe the sky away. The gray isn't gonna go away.
Yep. That is the hard thing with neural nets is you don't always know what the model's learning to pick up, right? It's picking up the signal,
not learning.
but you don't know what it is. It might be the gray sky. It might be.
It feels. I think that's what it is. It feels like to me that the thing with the you had a AI that was supposed to distinguish breeds of dogs. And it would say all these huskies because the background would be snowy, right? That's what it is.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like the sky's gray, must be raining. It's like, come on, dudes.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it definitely could happen. But you know, they'll improve it, and I think it's just they don't have any resources on it. I think like Elon. I know you're not going to listen to this. You'll never see this. Can you please just put an intern on wipers? Like seriously, just put one intern focusing on wipers. That would make so many people happy, and it would be so much less embarrassing when the car. Like I literally turn my auto wipers off. Like thankfully I have a Model S. When I found out that the 3 and the Ys you can't even do FSD without auto wipers,
Yeah.
it blew my mind. I was
Oh,
like,
really?
what?
I didn't know that you had the option to
Model
to
S,
turn.
you do not
Oh.
need auto wipers when you're doing FSD. Model S and X, it's not required. So like so I literally have auto wipers off most of the time when I'm driving.
You know, I don't know if this is an S problem, but it's definitely a 3 problem. Is if you have the windows open, right, as you're driving, if you use the washers, that's coming into the car. That's going to come in and drip on you if your windows are open and you turn on the washers. And sometimes the washers come on automatically, right? So it's like, what the heck? Can we not design a system where the washer doesn't like come into the car?
I haven't tried it, but I'll let you know that now I'm going to actively see if that happens in my car.
But I'm wondering if the S had enough foresight in the design of the windshield or whatever, such that when you use the washer and the window's open, it doesn't just decide to come in and then drip on your arm or whatever.
That's funny. Yeah, I'll have to see. But anyway, oh man, so this has been a blast. I'm super jealous about you getting to go in person and seeing all those cool things at the Cybertruck event. You know,
I think Lewis is willing to dress up as your wife next time.
Yeah, I mean, I'll wear a wig, like whatever you need. No,
Sorry, I couldn't bring you. I would have if I could have. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I feel you. I feel you. No, I would have done the same thing. Although my wife probably wouldn't have wanted to go, and she is an engineer. She just doesn't care about Tesla at all.
Oh, that's funny.
But anyway, so yeah, it's great having you. Thanks for all the your insights. Remember, folks, he has some cool videos that he posted on his channel, so go check out Dirty Tesla on YouTube. We'll follow him on X and all that kind of stuff. And as always, thanks for your support, follows, likes, subscribes, all that kind of stuff. Thanks for the questions. Keep it coming. We'll have more interesting guests. Not more interesting. We will have additional interesting guests like Dirty Tesla.
Wow,
Man,
thank
it's
you.
late. It's like 10 o'clock. I worked all day. I'm so
we
sorry.
won't bore you with people like Chris
Dude,
next
we
time.
won't bore you with people like Chris. No, Chris is very interesting. And anyway, one of these days I want to just pick your brain on your actual field of research and your day job, because that is, I probably find more interesting.
Sure.
Um,
I'm up
but
for
anyway,
it.
so we'll wrap this up. Thanks to all the producers and all the folks behind the scenes that make this happen. And again, for all your love and support and your hate, keep the comments coming. Post supporting members, TeslaMotorsClub.com. I'm going to stop talking now before I say something else dumb. And anyway, this was episode 56. We'll see you guys next time.
Peace.